Okay, we are live. Live. Well, hello everyone. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Gaston Marichal and I'm part of Test Improvement team. We are excited to have Erik van Veenendaal today as our special guest. This is the first time Erik's joining us in Test Improvement as a speaker. Erik has more than 30 years of experience in different roles related to QA and testing. And before we start, remember that if you have any questions or comments about what Erik will present, please write them in English, and at the end of the presentation, we will review all of them. Okay? So, welcome, Erik. Thanks again for joining us. And please feel free to start your presentation when ready. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Gaston. Thank you for asking me, and thank you all of you for attending. I have about an hour presentation, and I will talk about the test maturity model integration. What is the model? What is I would say, the whole TMMi initiative, because we will find out there's a lot more to TMMi than just a model. Also, we'll talk about where is TMMi today, where is it being used, and finally, I think we will talk about how you, as a person, as a tester, can get involved in TMMi. Okay. A few words about myself. I'm in IT and testing for a long time. As you can see, 1985, that's 30 years or more even. I've written some books in the past, been involved in ISTQB. Some of you, I think, know ISTQB, which is the test certification process. Also, I am currently the president of the Curacao Testing Board. So I live quite nearby, you might say, on Curacao, which is an island just north of Venezuela. I'm also the CEO of the TMMi Foundation. So something about me. What is important, I think, to know is I have a lot of practical experience with TMMi, which I will share, especially at TMMi levels 2 and 3, working in environments such as banking, automotive, healthcare, and my experiences with TMMi are both in a more traditional environment, let's say the V model environment, but also in an agile environment. Before we start looking at TMMi, I always think it's important to say, so why is it important that we have TMMi? Why is it important that testing invests time, invests money, because money is important to get better in testing. As I said, I've been involved in testing for a long time, and the testing challenges are changing. They are becoming bigger and bigger. Testing is becoming more and more important, or quality is becoming more important. And what we see, I think, and probably the same happens in Uruguay, is the business importance of the systems we are being developed are very important. A bank, let's say 20 years ago, software was just a supporting tool. Today, it is primary business. The systems we are testing are increasingly getting bigger and bigger and highly complex. We get, you may have heard about it, new technologies. Wow. We are testing what they call systems of systems. That means we're not testing one system, but through the internet, through all kinds of connections, we are testing a variety of systems that are all connected. These are huge challenges. And remember, our companies depend on the quality. They depend on testing. Today, if we are developing something, it has to run on multiple platforms, multiple browsers, multiple OSs, on a mobile phone, on a Samsung, on a Huawei, on an app, on a PC. So again, many challenges. I guess security is a challenge. Sometimes you outsource and it comes back and you have to test it again. So there are many, many, many challenges for testing. And for us, that means there's a need to constantly improve our skills, to constantly improve our processes. And it's not like, whoa, the fact that there are so many challenges, you will get extra time. No. I think in my world, and I guess the same in Uruguay, it still has to be ready yesterday. So time to market is always very critical. There's also been various measurements by people that show that the number of defects delivered by developers to testers hardly decrease. So we're seeing a world that we have many, many challenges. The number of defects is not really decreasing. Time to market is critical. We are in a world of, I would say, we need something. You see maybe the frog in the picture there. I was involved in a test team not too long ago, and it says niemals auf, that's German, for never give up, and the frog in this case was a test team. So we're seeing huge challenges for testing. I don't know if you can see this clearly in your slide, but this is, by the way, Dutch. I'm living on a Dutch island, and what I'm trying to show you here is basically proof of the previous slide. This is the world we're living in. If you follow newspapers, every week you can find a failure story of software. And sometimes it's not that important, and sometimes it is. There's one which you will see in the middle. It says thousands of prisoners released early because of a software defect. Wow, this is the world we're living in. You can see that the ATM went down, software defect. Train stations in Holland went down, software defect. And we can go on. So software testing is and will remain a very, very important part of software development. Before I go into TMMi, which is the main part of my topic, I'd like to discuss this slide with you. Basically, there's a number of ways you can start improving. And these three ways, I would say, are all needed. Today we'll talk about one of the three, but it's also important, I think, to think about, I want good people. I want testers that have a lot of skills and experience and knowledge. ISTQB, which you may be familiar with, focuses on the people side of things. Although, as of today, I think we heard the concept of T-shaped tester, maybe familiar. It's not only about people and all about testing. I think a tester today needs to know about requirements engineering, software development, scripting, so a lot more than just testing. So one angle of improvement is looking at getting better testers. Another angle is to think, what can we do on automation? So I think test automation is another angle of improving your testing processes. Automating your regression test set, automating unit testing, looking at coverage measurements. And the third angle is you can look at processes. And I think, not only think, but I believe that we need probably all three to be successful in the company. So we need good people. But good people without good processes supporting them is going to be very, very hard for them. The same thing, we need good processes. The good processes without having the right people doesn't make any sense. So we have people, good testers, we have automation, important, and we have processes, important. Let's focus on the process side. Let me try to explain what is a test process model such as the TMMi. Suppose that you're allowed from your boss, your employer, to attend a course. In ICB, you have advanced courses which take 4 to 5 days. Let's assume you are allowed to go to a 5-day course, ICB, on test design and test management. Doing that, you are asked to keep a list of all kinds of ideas that you can use to improve things back home. And you're making a list on these days of 10 ideas, 20 ideas, so maybe even 25 ideas that come out of the 5-day course and say, okay, I can start improving all these things. The question then is, which of these 25, 20 ideas fit in your organization? What test process models do is, on one hand, they help you to determine where are you, how mature are you today, you might say, and which may be good steps to take as a next step. So some of the ideas that you come with may not fit yet in the maturity of the organization, and some others may be the right choice. So there are many what I call content-based models, which provide you all kinds of ideas. How can we improve? ISO standards, ISTQB, there are books around, there are courses around. But the question is, which ones are the best ones for you based on your own maturity? So test process models like TMMi help you, test improvement models, to choose those practices that have most added value. Okay, the main topic of my talk will be about TMMi. The TMMi Foundation, as you can see on the slide, was founded as a non-profit organization back in 2005. And there were two main objectives. One was to develop a test improvement model called TMMi and develop, you might say, a standard model for test process improvement in the world. So develop the TMMi standard. The second objective, also important, is what we also like to achieve, is that we can create a framework for TMMi assessments. Basically meaning that if someone in China will do an assessment, and someone in the US does an assessment, and someone in Uruguay does an assessment, they will all follow the same rules. That basically means that the outcome from China, from the US, and from Uruguay are the same if you have the same set of practices. So we are building a framework for how TMMi assessments are done and measurements against the TMMi standard. The model itself was published 5 years later, as you can see, in 2010. Of course, built on many things. We didn't start from scratch. So we used a lot of practices from ISTQB. There are many syllabi around in ISTQB. You can use them. They describe how test management is done. They describe test design techniques. They describe test automation. They describe agile testing. They describe usability. So basically, we can look at all these practices and say, how can they fit in a maturity model? There are IEEE standards, which you may be familiar with, 829 for test documentation. There's a standard for reviews. Of course, there's also a model called TMMi, which is a model for software development organizations. So again, we can look at that. What can we learn from them? There are all kinds of papers on best practices. So all these inputs were used to build TMMi model. So the TMMi model is nothing, you might say, new, but it's more like putting all these practices in a certain order. Again, thinking back to the example, if you attended a course, which practices should I be doing and which ones I'm not ready for? Meanwhile, the model was initially published, of course, in English, not of course, well, in English. It's been translated into Chinese, which is probably not what you prefer, French, Portuguese, but many very important, also available today in Spanish. So most documents, which are available from the website for free, by the way, we are non-profit, we are sharing, we are building a community, are available also in Spanish. You can find the model there in Spanish. There are all kinds of other documents, and most of them are also available in Spanish. TMMi has been developed as an independent model. That means it is independent of a test method. So if you use a method like, I don't know how familiar it is, but TMAP, you can go with TMMi, depending. It's also intended to be independent of a life cycle. So if you're doing DevOps or Agile or sequential or the V model or waterfall, they should all work with TMMi. And I'll come back to that later on. Interesting enough, there was a publication in IEEE Software, which is a pretty respected magazine, I think, and several universities did a research, a survey, looking at how often are the various test process improvement models used in the world. And they declared that TMMi was by far the most applied model in the world. So we can now proudly say TMMi is the world's leading model for test process improvement. On this slide, you see the model, which I will explain a little bit more about in the next slides. As you can see, there are 5 levels. So level 1 is initial, level 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically, you can go back to your company tomorrow and say, hey, we are level 1 TMMi, and level 1 means you exist. Okay. You can also see that level 2, 3, 4, and 5, you have to do something to get there. At level 2, there are 5 different process areas, areas that you can start the improvement. So basically, these areas are typically your first step on becoming more mature. I will explain level 2, I think, on the next slide. Level 3 is the same thing. There are about 5 different areas which are the next step to become more mature. And 4 and 5 have 3 levels each. What we typically see, by the way, is that a company starting with test process improvement based on TMMi, it takes approximately, and of course it depends on where you come from, approximately 9 months to get to level 2. And I think 9 months is also to build a framework, if you want, or how do we do test improvements in our organization. Typically, from 2 to 3 is a shorter period, about 6 months. So these are some, if you want, guidelines, how long it takes to get to a certain level. You can also see the hand, and the hand says 5 fingers. I was listening once to Mark Polk, and Mark Polk is one of the developers of the TMMi, which is also a model which is similar for software development and also has 5 levels. And he asked me, do you know why TMMi only has 5 levels? I had no clue. And he said to me, because management can only count to 5. It was a joke. It was not a joke. What he meant is the model must be very, very simple. Because typically you will have a sales pitch at, let's say, board level of 10 minutes. And you need to be able to explain in 10 minutes what does the model look like and how does it work. And you can see here, we can picture that on one slide. Okay. Another comment on this slide is the one on top. It says, if you look at the world of testing, still the majority is at TMMi level 1. So if someone comes to me and says, I'm doing TMMi and I'm now level 2, you are way better than average. Don't aim for 5 or 4. Maybe 2 is good enough for you. That's a good start. As I said already, using the model gives you very much priorities and focus on your test process improvement. Because if you're level 1, don't worry about the things which are level 3, 4, and 5. Focus on the areas which are your first step. That's the idea. So it helps to set priorities and focus the test improvement process. It helps to say, these are the areas which are probably for us the best things to start improving. TMMi process areas. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit to level 2. Level 2 is called managed, as you can see. And level 2 basically is a very basic level. It says we need to do something to survive in the projects. So level 2 has no luxury, I would say. I call it very much a project-oriented process areas. So let's look at them. The first one is, or second one on the slide, is test planning. And test planning is not, in my view, something about, let's build a 40-page test plan. No, test planning is about think up front how you're going to approach your testing. That's what test planning is about. And within each level, each process area, we call that, so test planning is a process area, we have goals. So within test planning, for instance, a goal is perform a risk analysis. So you have clear focus, clear priorities. Define an approach. So if something is more important, what does that mean? How are we going to test it? Make sure you do a good estimation. It's also part of test planning. Getting commitment on your plan, on your approach. So there are a number of goals in test planning, and test planning is important because if you know plan, anything will do. Of course, not only planning, but then test monitoring control is important. Making sure you provide visibility of where you are, but also provide visibility on product quality to your stakeholders. And if you are off track, that you have a control mechanism on getting back on track. This is all very basic stuff. This is project-oriented process areas, but important for testers. And often they are not there. Test design execution. That you develop test conditions, not test cases yet. Test conditions from the requirements, from the user stories. And the right test cases subsequently. Execute them. You have incident management. And you do this in an environment that's as much as possible real life. That's available when you need it. That is managed and controlled. So 4 basic project-oriented process areas. And the 5th one, which is one on top, which is called test policy and strategy. And this is more or less a driver, if you want, for the whole test improvement project. Because if we start doing something, we need first to talk to management and talk to them and say, but what is the main problem we're having? Are our customers complaining about the number of defects? Or is testing too expensive? Are we slowing development down? So what's the policy in testing? Do we have testers as a role, or is it a career path? As a test manager, can I say something about unit testing or not? Test lead? So basically there is a communication with, you might say, management to start thinking about why, what's the need for test process improvement? And what's our policy in that? And what's the direction? As you can see on the slide also on the right, you see a machine, pick and place machine where I worked for a while. And very clearly, the focus was we are doing test process improvement because we want lead time reduction. And if you know that, then anything you do is in that focus. Because all of a sudden, risk-based testing becomes important. Why are we testing some things that we shouldn't be testing? Okay. So level 2, to me, is a very basic level. And despite having said that, the majority of the organizations don't have everything in place to be a fully compliant TMMi level 2 company. Level 3. Level 3 can be characterized by 2 words. One is called early involvement. That means level 2, you can still be involved too late. But level 3 company, because you've shown added value from being level 2, is when you are involved early. You are already there in the requirements phase. Because we've learned that risk-based testing and risk analysis should be done as early as possible. We have learned that from writing test designs, we find defects in requirements or in designs. So we want to be involved as early as possible. So one thing, it's early, which is a statement from level 3, and the other one is called institutionalization. So making sure that the improvements you make at level 2 are not forgotten when you move to a higher level. So what you see is the level 2 is very much project oriented. It now becomes what I call organizational process areas. We're starting to build a test organization. And of course, there are different models of test organizations. It doesn't mean we need a huge organization that does the testing. It could be a very small organization where the testers are actually embedded in teams, agile teams. But there's a test organization. There's someone, whereas level 2, test process improvement is a project, it's now a part of the organization. There are test roles defined. There are test functions defined. There is a test career path. We have a training program for testers so that they are consistently trained and ready for the job. As I said already, that doesn't mean only testing training, but also training on scripting or domain knowledge, or for requirements engineering if necessary. And by the way, when I say test training program, it also means training those who are not testers but are performing testing. If there are developers doing testing, they need to be trained. That's also part of TMMi. We define a life cycle, and the life cycle is now consistent across all projects. Level 2, we can do it differently in a project, but now we do it consistently. And we integrate our life cycle with software development. So when there is something happening in software development, testing is there as well. Remember, we are involved early. In level 3, we also now focus our improvements on non-functional testing. There may be some non-functional testing level 2. It may not be the focus of improvements. Why? Because first of all, you need to show things that they work functionally, and then it matters whether it's fast or reliable or maintainable. So non-functional testing And the last one is we are now having a peer review process. We are reviewing, and not we as testers, but as an organization, requirements. Well, we are reviewing designs. We are reviewing test designs. So level 3, if you want, is some engineering, but also organizational process areas. Level 2 and level 3. I'm not going to discuss level 4 and 5, if you don't mind, because we only have 1 hour. And I think for most organizations, 2 and 3 are enough challenges. I know this is only very high level, but I will point you later on to some references where to find more on level 2 or level 3. What are results that can be achieved with TMMi? These are, by the way, some data, some results that I achieved on my projects. So if you want more background, just ask me now or later on via email. And these are also results achieved by the companies that achieved TMMi levels 2 and 3. So not 4 and 5, the basic ones. The ones which I think are no luxury, we should all aim at becoming a level 2 or level 3 company. I don't mean certified, I mean level 2, 3, these are practices you should be doing. The first one you can see, the company improved their defect detection percentage over a number of years. So basically, they are finding a higher percentage before releasing to the customer. In this case, releasing to the market. The second one, alpha beta less lead time reduction. You can see over a number of years that the test execution phase went from around 16 months to about weeks, to about 4 weeks. So a huge lead time reduction. Allowing the company, as a result, to be earlier in the market and beating their competitors. The third one, deviation. So basically in this company, it was very important that the estimations upfront were very, very important. If you're working in an embedded software environment, for instance, TV environment, software development is one stage. Second stage is production of the TV sets. And if software development is late, a TV production, a factory basically, is waiting for the software. If you're 1 month late, a factory is waiting and losing money by the day. So it's very, very important to get very accurate estimations. So you can see here on the third slide that they're actually improving their estimations. Spent versus planned is much more accurate. And a fourth one, which you can see here is that you also see people who are working in testing are typically more satisfied, more happy, have a higher morale when they're working level 2, level 3. Why? Because you're respected. Because testing is taken seriously. Because there's a career path. Because you're allowed to get involved early. Because you're listened to. And of course, this is nice having a higher morale, but it means as a company, people don't leave. Less sick leave. Higher productivity. So these are examples of results that I've achieved personally in companies that I've worked in with TMMi. One more slide, although I'm not quite 100% clear whether I'm allowed to show this. We're currently running a worldwide survey through companies that have done assessments with TMMi in the past. And we're asking all kinds of questions like what are struggles, what is important, what are the benefits? And this is, as I said, it's not yet, the survey is not completed yet, but this is some initial results. And you can see here very clearly that almost 80% of the companies doing TMMi claim they are now producing better software quality. Wow. Most companies claim they are reducing the product risks. More than 70%, we are increasing testing productivity. More than 70%, we are improving the test engineering discipline. And I can, of course, go on. But you can see here, and this is important, if you talk about TMMi, we are getting more and more tangible benefits. And I'm sure the survey we published probably end of the year, next year, you will read a lot more about this. So it's not only about a model, but I think we are getting clear benefits from achieving level 2, achieving level 3, and of course 4 and 5 for some. This is always, I would say, a big debate, or sometimes a big debate. Is TMMi also fit for Agile? Is TMMi also needed for Agile? Because Agile has all these built-in quality things. Interestingly enough, there is a State of the Agile report. It's almost in its 14th, as you see, issue. And over the last so many years, they have shown what are the benefits of Agile. Better managed changing priorities. Improved project visibility. Wow, good. Business IT alignment, great. Time to market, wow. Increased team morale, yes, we all want that. But one's missing. In this list, it doesn't show improve product quality or less defects or whatever you want to call it. What I'm saying here, what I'm seeing is that of all these companies doing Agile, Agile does not automatically provide higher levels of product quality. It's possible, but no certainties. So even if you're in Agile, you still need good testing. So what we did as TMMi Foundation is we produced a document called TMMi and Agile saying, okay, but there are all these practices like test-driven development, like planning poker, like the testing pyramid, like the task board, like retrospectives. How do they fit in the model? So basically we're saying is, if you're doing Agile or sequential environment development, TMMi is still applicable. The goals will still be there. You still need to estimate. You still need to write good test designs. You still need to write test cases. You still need, and they go on. But the actual practices may be different. So the statement would be, in Agile, you're doing the same things, but you will do them slightly differently. You will still need test planning. Not writing a full test plan, but doing upfront thinking. You still need to write test cases. So TMMi is still very much applicable in Agile. I challenge us to read the document. It's also interesting if you go to an Agile conference or Agile testing conference, many people talk about exploratory testing, test automation, unit testing, and there is so much more that needs to be done and put in place to ensure we are achieving the right levels of quality. So what TMMi does, it reminds you, Agile organizations, of critical testing practices often forgotten. The great thing about Agile, by the way, is Agile says, please make your processes as lean as possible. That's great. We want that. By the way, writing lean processes is more difficult than many people think it is. So TMMi, as a result, is very much applicable in Agile, and we're seeing more and more organizations using TMMi for that. Some numbers, those of you who like numbers. We have a number of certified professionals. What you can do, and I'll come back to later on, is attend a course, do an exam, certified professionals. You can see on the slide on the right also what are large countries. So China is big, UK is big, India, France, US, Mexico, more closely. We have a number of certified organizations, and we're seeing a huge growth last year. Of course, as you can imagine, with COVID, the growth has slowed down. We're seeing accredited assessors. You can become an accredited TMMi assessor. There are all kinds of criteria for that. And then you are able to perform formal assessments in your country. And finally, very important, we also have what I call local chapters. The TMMi was originally set up from the UK, and of course you cannot conquer the world from the UK. So now we have local organizations, local chapters in many countries, which I'll show an overview later on, that actually take care of marketing TMMi locally. They organize training locally. They organize exams locally. So basically there are, you might say, even local organizations. Now this slide shows numbers of certified organizations. It shows assessors. It shows certified professionals. But for many people, whether it's the majority, I don't know, but I would say many or most, actually just go to the website, download the model, and start using it. And to us as a foundation, that's perfect, because that's why we're there. So if you don't care about certification, then don't go for certification. But you can still use the model as a basis for improving your own testing. Sorry, two more graphs and some trends up till last year. By the way, the curve has been generated by Excel, so I'm not sure how accurate that is, but that's the way it is. You can see on one hand number of formal assessments, and you can see from 2017, 18, 19, that is growing. So TMMi is getting bigger and bigger. And the same thing, by the way, about TMMi Professional. That's the first step exam. Also, you see a huge increase last year. And you wouldn't think that in 2020, it's gone all the way down. Interesting enough, we saw a 147% growth of TMMi Professional in Q1 and Q2 2020 compared to the first 2 quarters of last year. So I think we're still seeing a growth in the uptake of TMMi. How to get involved. This basically shows, if you want, a career path for those who say, hey, this is interesting for me. I want to know more about TMMi. Maybe my company should get involved in providing TMMi as a business. There's a first step, which we call TMMi Professional. And TMMi Professional is actually for everyone who says, I want to know more about TMMi. I am a tester. I'm responsible for automation. I'm whatever. So anyone who wants to know about test process improvement, wants about TMMi, can attend a course, typically 2-day courses. And there are also online courses, or you can just study the material. You can take an exam and become a certified TMMi professional. I believe in Latin America, there are courses being run by people from, I think, Bolivia. There is one, I think, in Argentina. There is one in Peru. So basically, TMMi Professional is step 1. Some people would say, I would love to become a consultant, to go to companies and advise them how to do TMMi-based test process improvement. For these people, we have initiated a scheme which we call the TMMi Test Process Improver. Of course, you need to know the TMMi, you are experienced in testing, you have some assessment skills, so there are all kinds of criteria, and you can grow from professional to a certified test process improver. And on the website of TMMi, you can find a register of those people who've achieved that status. On the other hand, you can also see people who say, hey, but I want to be a company or a person that performs assessments, lead assessor or assessor. And again, there are schemes, there are criteria for that. So basically what I'm showing on this slide is that there are all kinds of ways to get involved, but the first step is always build knowledge on TMMi and become a TMMi professional. As I said already, there are local organizations or local chapters, we call them. And you can see here the dots where they are based. There's a few based in the Americas. There's quite a few in Europe, of course. There is a strong also presence in Asia, China, South Korea, Malaysia, India. And the ones in the Americas are, there's a chapter in Canada, recently established, by the way. There's a chapter in the US. There is a chapter in Mexico. There is a chapter in Brazil. There is unfortunately no chapter yet in Uruguay, and there is one on the island of Curacao. So there's a number of chapters. There's, by the way, also a chapter in Spain, which is relevant, I think, to the community, because the chapter in Spain is working very closely with the one in Mexico on translating all documents that we issue in Spanish. So that's an important one to know. I recently ran a course on TMMi Professional. So basically explaining people about TMMi, what it is, how it works, what the levels are, how to become an assessor, what assessments are in TMMi. And at the end, we asked everyone, please write down what you think about a TMMi. And interesting enough, we got a very nice slide or set of comments from them, which I think are almost like a last slide for this presentation. The first thing is what I said is, we like TMMi because it's very much objective driven. And we haven't discussed that very much, but I think it's important to understand that in TMMi, if you set a test policy and set a clear goal, that goal is leading for everything you do. TMMi is not a checklist or a tick-off list of all kinds of practices. In the process areas like test planning, there are goals, and it's up to you how you want to achieve these goals. TMMi gives examples, up to you. So it's very much objective driven, goal driven. And if your goal is, I want to minimize the number of defects, you will use TMMi differently than when you say, my objective is to minimize lead time. A second comment was, we like it because it's very much ISTQB related. It uses the same terminology. The syllabi are used within ISTQB or within TMMi almost to build the practices. So it's the same flavor. And ISTQB, as you probably know, is worldwide the leading for test certification. Well-founded. It's been developed with universities over a number of years. It helps because it gives you clear priorities. If you want to achieve level 2, there are only 5 process areas. Let's focus on those and forget about everything else. they learned that it's very easy to do a self-assessment. It's no need to ask a formal auditor to come in and spend a lot of money on that. They also like the fact that it was freely available. Go to the website, download whatever you want. Also to be used with Agile. It's an open community. And also there is ongoing development. There are all the time new developments taking place in TMMi. Is not something which is covered and done. In case you get interested and want to have more information, there are a number of books available, which you can easily find on the internet. I wouldn't recommend the ones in Chinese, but they are available if you want. The good thing about this, the little TMMi, which is basically the essential book also for TMMi Professional, will very soon be available also in Spanish. It's currently in its final review stage. So that should be out in a number of months, I would say. As I said already, or go to the website and download everything you need, or go to the website from the Spanish chapter. They will have everything in Spanish. There's a lot more information, and there is a lot more information to attend. Here's my details. On my website, I also have a TMMi page with all the documents, so it's very condensed if you're interested in that. As Gaston already said, if you have a question on TMMi which you did not answer, or the question tonight, please use the email address. Twitter, I typically tweet a lot about TMMi, so a lot of news going on also there. And I think we now have about 10 more minutes, which is good. So I was asked, are there any more questions?
Nice. Well, thank you, Erik. Great presentation. So, as you said, we have about 10 minutes for questions or comments. So, I let you to write in the chat all the questions, and I will show those questions on screen so you can answer. Let's take a minute.
And of course, if you have a question tomorrow or the day after, feel free to use the email address. Even if you want to answer the question in Spanish, that's still okay. I will use Google Translate and get back to you as well.
Nice. Well, let's start, Erik, with one question.
Okay, what type of companies or organizations typically use TMMi? As I said already earlier, we are currently doing a worldwide survey. And one of the things we're asking people is, so can you please tell me what your domain is, where you're working in? And we're currently seeing, I think, 3 types of companies, especially using TMMi. There's a huge, maybe the biggest group is in the finance domain. So banking, insurance. They're also looking for things like compliance. The second group is IT software companies who want to improve their skills on delivering, on achieving product quality to their customers. And the third group of companies is a group that I would say who are more in the safety critical business. So think about automotive, healthcare, and the like. So these kind of companies are typically very much involved in TMMi.
Great. Let's continue. Next question.
Okay, how do I become a TMMi assessor? There are criteria for that, and basically you need 3 types of knowledge. First of all, you need to understand TMMi. Okay, that's a vital one. And for this, there is the basic level which I explained, TMMi Professional. So show you understand TMMi. Second thing, you are doing assessments on test processes. So we expect that person to show, preferably by means of certification, that he has an extensive knowledge on testing. And the third one is you need to understand how to do assessments. So basically there are 3 domains and there are criteria defined in each of these domains. And if you comply to these criteria, you can apply, there are forms for that, to the TMMi Foundation to become a lead assessor. And then you are allowed to perform formal assessments in your country or in the world, basically.
Thanks, Eric. So I think we have time for one more question.
How can we join the local chapters? That's a good one. I would very much like Uruguay to join. As you can see, there is still a gap. It's not that hard. First of all, I think the main thing is that you need to find a legal entity, because you cannot just join as a person. If there's a legal entity, it could even be Testing Uruguay as an organization. You want to say you want to take the lead, and if you are a legal entity, you can approach the foundation and very easily become a local chapter. I know, this is what I know, there is also an ISTQB board called the Hispanic Software Testing Qualifications Board, which is already existing, and they, I think, cover Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, and they are also, as an entity, are discussing, do we want to join the TMMi Foundation as a local chapter covering all of these countries? But for sure, if there's an initiative in Uruguay and you approach us and saying, we want to become a local chapter, we can talk, and this is not a long process. Yes.
Nice, thank you, Eric, again. Well, I think we reached to the end of the presentation. Just thank you again, Eric. It has been a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. See you soon and keep safe.
Thank you.